Everyone is welcome here, it's time to make new friends. Aquavide Uskaba, fill your Glencairn. Share a dram with the spirit of Edmonton.
Slancha. I'm just getting some drinks available. Good evening, whiskey brothers, whiskey sisters, and whiskey friends, and welcome to episode 57 of the Canadian Whisky Journey's Whiskey Review. I'm Dolph. I'm president of the Alberta Scotch Society, created the kid of the Whiskey Journey, the Whiskey Book Club, your host tonight, and I'm joined by this gentleman over here, Gordon Lance, owner, master distiller extraordinaire from Odd Society Spirits. How you doing tonight, Gordon?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
I'm so happy too. I'm drinking this tonight. So, for everyone out there, we're continuing our Canadian whiskey journey with whiskey that was the must-have, the funky and fabulous dram of the night at the 2023 Victoria Whiskey Festival. I was honored to work with Gordon right here that night, and linked to his baby, the Odd Society Spirits. And I'm just going to throw a couple little pictures up here for people so they could see what we did that night. So this is our lovely picture. Two good-looking guys there. There's and that's what we had for the night. You can see the two Commodores, the Prospector, the Maple, the Peat and Smoke, and that was the Robbie Burns that had a little bit of smoke. And that one on the end is the community one that we're going to talk about tonight. It's the community collaboration whiskey, and it was a fun night. I've got to say, I had a fantastic time, and this Bright Star. I was going to give a little bit of information. I'm going to say two things: porcini, mushrooms, handicap mushrooms. But Gordon, I'm going to ask you to talk about this and specifically about the collaboration concept that brought this to fruition. And then we'll talk about the tasting notes and everything we came across that night, if that's okay, sir.
Yeah, that sounds great. So what we've started to do, I mean, almost right from day one, our distillery was partnering with basically our neighbors in our neighborhood. So if you've ever been to the distillery, there are within about 10 blocks, there are 12 different breweries, or even more now, I believe. So within walking distance. So we've tried to collaborate with a lot of these breweries in the beginning, where they would do the mash. We bring the mash to Odd Society, and then we ferment and distill it. And so those have been a lot of our collaborations.
And I've got 4 of them.
Oh,
and we reviewed 4 of them so far. I'm waiting for more, but that's okay.
Yeah. There are more coming. Actually, I can talk about those too. So then we've also done a few things where it wasn't the brewery actually mashing. We've done a few where people had special barrels, and we've done some barrel finishes. And then what happened was a friend of Joel's, a friend of ours, was opening a new restaurant called Wild Thing. And he wanted to do something really special to promote with his opening of his restaurant. Todd's the owner. He loves mushrooms. And so he and Joel, our main distiller, got together and we're figuring out how we could do a mushroom whiskey. And so so the community is our overarching sort of brand. And then this community collaboration is called Wild Thing. And so
what's the restaurant again? The restaurant's called Wild Thing.
The restaurant's called Wild Thing. Yeah.
Straight Wild Thing. So people should go there.
Yeah.
Well, it is the song too that we like the song. I was going to play the song as we had this, but try not to distract from the whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a fantastic whiskey it was, and we had a lot of fun with it that night, you and I. And just to refresh your memory, although you heard this a lot, when people came to the table, everyone was saying, "Where's this mushroom whiskey we have to have?" And I pointed them most of the time, if I could, to 2. I said, "You have to have 2 whiskeys. You have to have this one first, the Maple." And I'm going to have you tell us really quick about this because we've talked about this a lot in the past. But just a quick little thing before I talk about the rest of that.
So the Maple is another one that we generally have at Christmas time. And so originally the idea was There's a distillery in Washington called Woodinville Whiskey Company, and they sell a delicious barrel-aged maple syrup. So they dump their bourbon barrels, the smaller ones. They fill them with maple syrup from Vermont because they're in the U.S. and they age it. I'm not really even sure 3, 4, 5 months. And they dump that. They dump those barrels and bottle up their syrup, and then they're left with these barrels. And so we decided, hey, wouldn't that be a cool idea to start putting the whiskey in them?
Yeah,
which is what we did. So originally, some of ours were more sweet, but this actual release was a little bit less sweet. We had used the barrels twice, and then some of them were fresh barrels. So we still get some of that maple flavor, but that's basically how we do it.
Did we have batch 5? Because I've got batch 5. Did we have batch 5 on the table with us? Was that the one?
I wish I knew. I'm sorry.
Just so many batches. He's a busy guy. Now, and I liked it, I've got to say, and I've tried it right from the barrel at cast strength when we had it there, and that was heavenly. And I told you I was going to buy that barrel if I could, and you wouldn't let me. But it's okay because everyone gets to try it now. And people tried this at the show, so I made them try that, and it was maple right off the top. They could tell just a big blast of maple. On the palate, though, it was subdued, and it was more mellow and not as sweet. And that's great for me because I'm not a sweet guy, really. Well, I try to be, but I'm not. And then we poured this one for them. And what they got right off the top was all mushroom, complete mushroom. They got that. And then I asked them, I said, once, keep nosing it. And once you get to the sweet, to take the taste. And what did you get on the palate at first? Because I know exactly what I did, but I can't remember if I kind of pushed my thought on you, you pushed your thought on me, or I pushed it on everyone else. I can't remember. What did you think the first time you tried it?
Well, I thought, you get what I really found remarkable about it. First of all, mushroom is a pretty odd concept. But I like there's a very thick mouthfeel, I find. There's a richness to it. And there's definitely a sweetness. And I know, Dolph, you kept saying it reminded you of the maple cookies you had as a kid.
Yeah. Maple cream cookies.
Yeah, maple cream, and it's true. It's kind of there's just that rich, and then there's a beautiful sweetness and surprisingly, there is no sugar added, and any sweetness in this whiskey comes directly from the candy cap mushroom itself.
Which was surprising. It was surprising for me. It was surprising for people when they tasted it, but I think you really liked the expression on their faces when they had it, because when people are having the mushroom whiskey, they were a bit apprehensive, right? And they came up and said, I have to try it. People tell me I have to try this. They've been saying it all night. They get there and they put it and they mushroom. It's all mushroom. And we say, like, keep going, keep nosing. And then for me, it was caramel, but maybe it was more maple like on the nose, but it was all caramel for me after that, which I get. And as soon as the caramel hit, that's when I tasted, and it was more maple. And your first comment was it's more maple than the maple whiskey. And It is on the palate. It truly was. A couple people, though, had all mushrooms. They said, nope, I don't get it, Dolph. I think you're full of something. These were good friends of mine, which maybe they just didn't want to give it.
They're allowed to say that, right?
They could say that. They can say whatever they want. But it was a great night. It was fun. For information for people, by the way, 375 mils, 46%. It was $42 that night. And I might have bought the last 2 on sale in British Columbia. So, and Stephen was there that night. Hey, Mr. Schmutz, how you doing? Another good friend. So he showed up, and umami that turned into maple cookies. Hopefully I didn't push that on him, because I kept saying that to people. Whiskey neighbor, cheers. Happy to listen. Happy to hear from you, kind sir. It's nice to have you up here as well. This was the most unique whiskey I have had for a very long time, and I introduced this to people there. Oh, yes.
Good job.
I introduced this to the whiskey aficionados, the whiskey geeks that surrounded us that night, and I was quite serious in saying that you can bring this bottle out and try to give it to friends that have had a lot of whiskeys. And I've got friends that have had a substantial amount of whiskeys over time, and they have never had anything like this before. They haven't. I can bet so much it would have never, ever, ever happened. And were you thinking about doing that when this came out? Was that the intent, Gordon?
It was just, we're always trying wacky things. So, and, it started definitely, we thought, oh, well, we're sort of game to try stuff. And, but it's been so well received that we're going to have to do a lot more of it. And the nice part about this, and, sometimes when you have a single barrel release, it's really hard to replicate that. You can't. I mean, it was a special barrel, a certain amount of time, and you can't recoup that, or you can't do it again just because it was special. Whereas we feel that the way we've done this whiskey is that we hope, we believe, we think we can replicate it just because of the way we've done it. So we have a couple of things to do before, but we're looking at maybe March or so when we're going to release another one of these.
Beautiful. And a great idea. And my question, you've answered it mostly, was, are you going to try to get it exactly the same? Will you be okay if you change it for the better in your mind, or do you just want to have it like this because people thought it was great, but will you want to tweak something?
Well, we always try to, so especially for something like this, we'll keep a bottle, and when it comes time to create the new batch, we're going to compare it to the old one. And because of how we did it, the infusion happened with a strong mushroom tea.
Yep.
And then went back in the barrel for 6 weeks. So when we did the final blending to bottling strength to get it down to 46, we have a little bit of opportunity to tweak it. And
Okay.
so we'll try and tweak it we want it as good or better always. If we can do our new batch better than our last, we're ecstatic, Yeah.
Even if it was the hit of hits that night, it could get better. And I'm about that. I believe it can. I don't know if this one can get better, but just about anything we do, if we think we've hit the pinnacle, I think we can still do better some other time. So, although I don't know if you can do better than that maple barrel I tried in the summer 2 years ago. Or is it 3? I don't know. That was.
Yeah, that could have, should have been a single barrel release, maybe,
That would have been my hope. But then you couldn't have had it in so many other things and the other batches otherwise. So monetarily, it was a good decision. Although I'm waiting for it one day. That night we had your core wine. So we had the 2 Commodores. We also had the rye. I just said it before, Prospector rye. And so these are part of your core range that are out for whiskeys all the time. You had the peat and smoke, and this is changing bit by bit because you do different types of peat. So do you have the first one? Do you have this one is the Scottish peat, and you've got
the one I have. The first one was our Washington peat.
Yeah. And what's next for peats?
So what we have, the peated ones, we have a local bog that's protected. It's called Burns Bog. All school children, everybody takes a field trip to Burns Bog. It's so much a part of, everybody knows Burns Bog around here. And so even though it's completely protected, we were able to get some peat through the Burns Bog Conservation Society.
Okay.
A roadway. And so they had already disturbed the bog. And so we were allowed to get some of the peat. So we've got some Burns Bog in barrels, and we've got a little more peat that we're having, peated malt made. And so we're going to have Burns Bog. Another interesting one for all the Albertans out there. We are having some sent this week. It's some peat from Alberta. I believe it's in the north of Edmonton, Ardrossan area.
Nice. Okay. Excellent.
So of course, it'll take 3, 4, 5 years before it's done, but there will be an Alberta peated malt coming down the pike from Odd Society at some point.
And people should know Gordon's got a big link with Edmonton. He was an Edmonton boy for a while, right?
Yes, that's
And,
right. Born and raised. Yeah.
That's what Laura said. Yeah, my wife remembers these things very well. So we've got the link to those. Gordon, what I'm going to ask you, and you might forget, but I'll send you a text. If you could get just the smallest piece of your peat, the next one, so that I could try to burn it to get that scent, I think that would be kind of cool. Just a sugar cube size of it, if I could. I think that'd be really cool. Well, kind sir, that's it. Let's do the tasting just really quick if we have it. But there's nothing we haven't said. The umami, the mushroom is so prevalent on the nose. I get caramel. Do you get something else on the nose?
I do get a little, or I now it's sometimes I tried it so often, but I did get often when I usually get maple as well. I get a bit of maple,
that's fine. That's obviously fine. It's what goes on the palate. Not on the palate for me right away. Gordon said it's a nice assange, buddy. And cheers, salute,
all that.
Yeah. I find it creamy on the palate, so it's not just slightly nice mouthfeel, but creamy. It's nice, and so it's chewable. I guess you can talk about chewing on it. It's great that way. And I'm gonna say the finish right up front, right away. I get my cookies that I told you about. So the maple cream cookies, and that's almost immediate. That's got to be half a second into it. As soon as I think air touches it as I'm breathing in, it's all that. And my wife says she's drinking it now. The biscuit of the cookies, what she's going for. I don't know if it's the cream inside, but she's doing both.
Yeah, and what's nice, I think, is kind of, if people think of mushrooms, you think of, like how could that
possibly be good?
Good. And but so it's fun that it's surprisingly drinkable. It's very very enjoyable in my opinion. So
I agree.
An apéritif, do you want this before dinner, after dinner, sitting in front of? No, this would go great with certain meals too, right?
What's funny was we had someone come to the distillery, and she was a Japanese woman associated with a distillery, and I can't remember which one now. And so she was doing a flight of whiskeys, and then so I gave her the mushroom, and she was over the moon because she said in Japan, people drink whiskey with food mainly. It's less on its own, and they like to have it with food. And she was just loving the fact that this would go perfectly with Japanese food. So
okay. Okay, that's perfect. And at that restaurant, I'm sure you gave some to the restaurant with it. And are they pairing it with certain dishes?
Oh yeah, actually not. They have a couple of special mushroom cocktails on the menu though. They're a cocktail bar, so you can order their mushroom cocktails. Same as at our distillery, we've got a couple really delicious mushroom cocktails.
Well, I'm sure they're great, but I'm sticking with the straight first, I think. Well, because I can pour a lot of it and enjoy a lot. And not just the hint, it's just the whole kitten. Kind sir, one last question before you go. So the beer community, what do we have coming up? So the community collab with which breweries then coming now?
So the one, so we generally release things around Christmas. So next year we have a fun one with Bomber Brewing. It's an IPA. It's an IPA whiskey.
Okay,
so,
and that's hard to do because of the hops with whiskey. Sometimes
it's tough. Yeah. So we actually did different strengths of hops. And so we'll see. We'll try and blend it and make it palatable. But and then we have another one, and this is from another local, a few blocks away, called Strange Fellows Brewing, and they did a Creek beer, like a Belgian beer that uses sour cherries. And so I think in their mash there were about 500 pounds of sour cherries, and then again that came to the distillery and we distilled that. So those are a couple we've got coming down the pike.
I've got 4, so I've got those 3. My wife's holding up that, and the 4th one's up there. It's half gone, but I love them. I really do. So I'm a beer guy. I brew as well, and it makes me really happy.
And the one we actually still have one that we released at Christmas called, that was one with Lupolo Brewing,
Ooh.
and we're still selling that one. And that one, believe it or not, had a bit of buckwheat in it. They did a New World sour, and then we took that, distilled it, fermented, and then distilled it. So that it's surprisingly light, and that sour taste doesn't really come through, but it's a super pleasant, nice whiskey,
Okay. Well, I'll text Miriam and I'll buy a bottle of that. Because I'll get it before anyone else does after they hear this. So I got to go fast. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic time. And start thinking about what your special has to have dram is going to be for next year at Victoria, because you're going to need something to follow this up that's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we'll hope to see you there. And thank you.
If I could ever get there, I'll get there every year for the rest of my life.
Talk to your wife about that, right? That she has to let you go, right?
She loves whiskey too. Yeah. Cheers, everybody. Have a fantastic night. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Gordon. And we'll see you again. See you soon.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers.